Hello everybody, welcome to this week's Protection Updates, Friday the 17th of December. Well, we've got one more week to go before Christmas, so how are your plans faring up? For us at the network, there's still loads to do before we hit that inevitable point at the end of next week where it all stops and we have to take a break over the Christmas holidays. But obviously we're not there yet, so what is happening right now? Well, I got an email from Rob Wolf from Raw Mortgages last week, and I thought there was something in there that was quite interesting. Rob's in the middle of arranging a residential mortgage, and the client that he has is single, but his mum will be living with him but won't be on the mortgage. Now, Rob says that he spoke to NatWest to understand what their process was in the situation that the client, or the mortgager, dies before his mother, who's not on the mortgage, and during the mortgage term. NatWest said that the first thing they'll want to know is details of the life cover on the mortgager. They want to know that because they would want the mortgage to be settled, which is obviously a very simple objective. And my immediate thoughts went down the process of how would you set up a policy solution, make sure that there's a will, do we use a trust on the life assurance, or do we consider life of another, things like that. But if we simplify it and take it back to basics, the lender wanted to know about the life cover. Why? Because that's the most obvious vehicle to repay the mortgage loan. Obviously, in this country, that's still a choice that the customer has to decide. Do I take out cover? Do I not take out cover? If you hop across the water, though, to Ireland, mortgage protection is mandatory with a mortgage. If you're under 50, you should take out mortgage protection with a new mortgage. So what should the perception look like in Ireland if you're taking out a new mortgage? That you have to have life cover because that loan needs to be repaid. If you're alive, you'll be able to keep up your mortgage payments, probably. If you die, though, you won't, and that's why there are rules in place that say you should take out cover so that repayment of the mortgage can happen. Personally, I'd like to see something like that back over here again. We used to have assignments a few years ago, but what's your house view in your business regarding the process that you go through with your clients? What I'm asking is whether you manage the expectations of your customers, and do you signpost what's going to happen now and a bit later on down the line in your process? In fact, are you assertive? Do you make it clear that as a responsible business, you expect all of your clients to at least consider the risks associated with taking out a mortgage? And that means a conversation with you. What risks are we talking about? Your home may be repossessed if you can't keep up repayments on the mortgage. Is it fair to assume that clients don't want that? They don't want the home to be taken away from them. I think it is. Nobody wants to lose the home. But when you look at your sales process, generally speaking, do you think your clients ever want to go off-road and be recommended something that nobody else has ever done before? Or do they appreciate safety in numbers? What other customers do? People just like them. Doesn't that make common sense? I think that how you frame things is super important. How clients receive messages is also super important. And that's because it can set out that perception about what they need to do and what things need to be addressed. So in Rob's client situation, I just thought it was interesting to see the client reaction to what NatWest said they would instinctively ask for, life cover. It made it sound like a no-brainer, and it sounded like something that they would expect that the client had in place. Now, have you seen a film that came out in 1998, quite a few years ago, called Sliding Doors? It stars Gwyneth Paltrow, and it's set in London, and the central idea of the film shows two different storylines of what happens when she gets on a train and what happens when she misses the same train. And the story shows how that single moment of missing the train or getting the train leads to two very different outcomes in the main character's life. One good and one not very good. Well, Aviva have just released some sales aids, and one of them reminds me of that film, and it's called The Difference Income Protection Can Make. I've put a link to it on the protection update so you can take a look at it. But if you open it up, it starts with the same person, but in two parallel timelines. You'll see Joe, one with income protection, and another Joe without any income protection cover. And it looks at what the next 6 months will look like if he suffers an accidental injury that leads to him being off work for 6 months. What you'll see is the sick pay he gets from his employer, and then when it runs out, how much he gets on state benefits, his need to start using his savings and how to make ends meet, and so on and so on. Now, the other sales aid is a bit more straightforward. This talks about the value of protection, and it talks about how protection can help improve the financial resilience of your customers. And that means avoiding the serious impact of what could devastate us financially. The Sales Aid has got some of the latest numbers in terms of how much it costs to live in this country. We know it's expensive and we know that things are on the rise. So that's another good Sales Aid for you to take a look at. As I say, I've put a link to both of these in this week's Protection Update. And just as I wrap things up for another week, there isn't a Protection Insight podcast this week, but can you let me know if there's something that you would like me to investigate for you? Is there a product out there that you've just not got your head around yet? What about a system or a tool? Or it could be an entire proposition. Just let me know. Send me an email, drop me a line. If you do, I'll get it done. But what I will be doing next year is scaling back the amount of these Protection Insight podcasts next year, because I'll be looking after all the different propositions that we do have here at the network. I've earmarked about 20 Protection Insight podcasts, but of course, don't forget that's on top of the weekly protection updates, which I'll continue to do each and every week. So have a great week next week, and I'll speak to you once again on Christmas Eve, next Friday. See you then.